Halo Combat Evolved revolutionized the FPS gaming industry when it dropped in 2001. Before Halo, FPS games on console were a joke. The controls were awful, the controllers clearly weren't built with FPS games in mind, and no one had managed to capture the community behind games like Counter-Strike or Quake on a console FPS. This all changed when Bungie began creating the Halo CE we know today. Instead of creating an FPS limited by a control layout, Bungie flipped the script and built Halo around the Xbox's controller layout, and then tuned every single game mechanic to fit around a console experience. Through this, Bungie effectively redesigned what a first-person shooter was, and shifted the next generation of FPS games to be played on console. Because of these innovations and what Bungie did for the industry, Halo to this day is considered a masterpiece. But Halo wasn't only remembered for how it revolutionized an industry. There's characters, a story, and an entire experience everyone was introduced to. I think from just the main menu alone, people realized this was going to be something special. This game was our first look into the Halo universe. It introduced us to Master Chief, Cortana, Sergeant Johnson, 343 Guilty Spark, Elites, Grunts, Jackals, the Flood, the CE Magnum, the CE Shotgun. Oh my god, the CE Shotgun, this thing is so fucking good. Even something as simple as the enemy AI dialogue is shrouded in a veil of nostalgia so deep it's still in jokes to this day. Bungie's addition of LAN multiplayer that could allow 16 players to play a game of Halo simultaneously off of just 4 consoles created a multiplayer experience that's etched into people's minds to this day. The Magnum's absolute domination, the announcer,
double kill, triple kill,
dealing with the deadliest vehicles ever created, teabagging, accidental team killing because of the vehicle physics, all of it is quintessentially Halo CE, and for some of these points, Halo as a franchise. Speaking solely about the campaign levels themselves though, I think the real moment people realized the scope of what they were playing was when they finished Pillar of Autumn and took their first steps on Halo. I personally remember playing as a kid and looking around trying to think about just what Halo was and why it looked the way it did. Looking back now with all the knowledge I've absorbed about the franchise and the lore, I wouldn't say it sours the experience, but it definitely removes the mystery that the location once held for me. The Silent Cartographer's beach entrance and subsequent battle gave an amazing glimpse into what fighting alongside the Marines and AI in the universe feels like. It made you dream about what even larger battles would look like. 343 Guilty Spark's introduction and the reveal of the Flood changed the tone of the game from an action movie to a horror game for a short period of time. The library was just long, but the number one thing I remember the most from this game, the final level. Escaping from the Pillar of Autumn as it's exploding, a clock counting down just how long you have left to escape, Foehammer crashing as you reach the bridge, this one jump flipping your Warthog like 80% of the time and almost giving you a heart attack, but finally you make it and you escape Halo, and then all we're left with is a teaser for the next game and the mystery behind Master Chief's face. With Halo considered a success and Bungie fresh with ideas on what they wanted a sequel to include and look like, fans of Halo wouldn't have to wait long for the next outing, and it was only a matter of when, not if, Halo 2 would come out. The fact that Halo 2 managed to be released and is a thing that exists today is a miracle. Looking at development logs, interviews, and testimonies from former employees at Bungie at the time, this game's development was a mess. You remember that one E3 demo for Halo 2? The one where Sergeant Johnson did a warm-up talking about how this was no smoke and mirrors bullshit? Bungie was forced to scrap the entire demo section and essentially create the Halo 2 we know today in around 10 to 12 months. This game ruined jobs, people, friendships, relationships, marriages, and almost shut down Bungie entirely. But, of course, Bungie made it, and they made it good. It's honestly shocking just how good this game turned out once you know the story behind it, and how much better it is than some games that have taken much, much longer than Halo 2 to make. Halo 2's goal was to build off of what Halo CE started, and to make every single aspect better than what it was before, even if they had to cut a majority of their ideas. A bigger and better story, new characters, more world building, more lore, more enemies, more weapons, more vehicles, bigger levels, larger set pieces, more music, larger, longer, and better looking cutscenes, and probably best of all, an online multiplayer experience. This game's multiplayer set the standard for what an online multiplayer experience was on console. Maps returned, others were new and immediately became classics. The announcer returned with even more voice lines and kill streaks.
Unfreaking believable.
The general gameplay is faster, dual wielding, just the sound of the battle rifle. Some people to this day still consider this the peak of multiplayer in Halo, and while I might disagree, it's definitely a contender. The campaign, as I said before, was everything Halo CE was, but bigger and better. The opening of the game, seeing Master Chief's new armor.
Sir, permission to leave the station.
For what purpose, Master Chief?
To give the Covenant back their bomb.
Seeing a scarab for the first time.
Usually the good Lord works in mysterious ways, but not today. This here is 66 tons of straight up, HE spewing divine intervention. If God is love, then you can call me Cupid.
Taking down your first scarab, playing as the Arbiter for the first time. Okay, I think everyone knows what this is going. I could sit here for the next 5 minutes and run down every single moment of this campaign, or I could just tell you straight up that every single line in this game is a quote.
I saw it too. It looked like a temple. If I were a megalomaniac, and I'm not, that's where I'd be.
And every single cutscene is memorable for something. I can't specifically nail down a ranked list of lines, so here's 10 with absolutely no particular ranking or order.
For a brick, he flew pretty good.
I am a monument to all your sins.
Politics, how tiresome.
Just one question. What if you miss?
I won't. You are the Arbiter, the will of the prophets. But these are my elites. Their lives matter to me, yours does not. That makes two of us.
Like a postcard. Dear Sarge, kicking ass in outer space, wish you were here.
I heard that, jackass.
Come out so we may kill you.
Get in line.
Dear humanity, we regret being alien bastards. We regret coming to Earth. And we most definitely regret the Corps just blew up our raggedy-ass fleet. Hoorah!
What would you have your Arbiter do?
Let him be. The great journey waits for no one, brother. Not even you.
I believe, at least personally, the real reason this game was remembered by so many people, though, is because of what it did for the franchise as a whole. Halo 2 broke records and leapt past the gaming community for a short time to become national news. It entered mainstream discussion in a time where gaming was still considered a somewhat niche thing, and for that, it stuck with people, creating lasting memories that you and I can look back on to this day. And for those who can't look back, you can at least look at these photos and imagine what was going through people's minds. And with that said and done, Bungie set their eyes on their next project now, Halo 3. Something eager Halo fans would have to wait another 3 years for. To get an idea of just how hard waiting for them was back then, and for those who just don't know in general, Halo 2 ended on one of gaming's most iconic cliffhangers ever, and left only one thing on the minds of players: finishing the fight. If you looked at the images of Halo 2's midnight launch and thought, man, this event must have been massive, I have some news for you. Halo 3's midnight launch eclipsed Halo 2's. I really don't know how I can show just how big this thing was, but I'll try my best. Halo 3 sold $170 million worth of copies in the first 24 hours. Over 1 million people were online at once on Xbox Live playing Halo 3 in the first 20 hours. Lines were almost endless, stores were packed, the NASDAQ celebrated Halo 3's launch, Best Buy painted entire storefronts with game art. They painted a car, Halo 3 themed Burger King meals, and if none of that does it for you, here's Bill Gates himself selling the first copy of Halo 3. This game didn't just enter mainstream discussion, it was the mainstream discussion, thanks in part to Bungie's insane marketing. I think I could show either of these trailers and make a grown man cry, but this one, I don't think, I know for a fact. Now, with all this hype, I can imagine the one question everyone has is, well, did it live up to it? And to that, I'm gonna have to say, do you really need to ask? This campaign is regarded as one of the best in the FPS industry. The multiplayer experience is still considered to be one of the best ever. Having a theater mode so players can look back at games they played and clip insane moments or kills they had, or even make machinimas.
That was the worst throw ever. Of all time.
And Forge, the ability for players to create custom games that people still make lobbies to play to this day. Genuinely, on a side note, I don't know how many hours I owe Trash Compactor, but it's probably an unhealthy amount of time. The actual multiplayer experience itself is, as I've said, nearly timeless. 14 years later, and people still bring this game up as if it came out a year ago. And I really can't disagree when people talk about just how good it was. The level system, nearly all of the maps, nearly.
Go to hell, stupid fucking slow down.
Full-on armor customization customization that, for a very special few, let them flex their sick recon armor. SWAT in this game is crazy. Slayer is, as I've said before, timeless. There's honestly just so many memories with this game's multiplayer. Hours spent sitting in front of the TV screen, well past when Halo 3 was in its prime. Where I spent more hours though, mostly because I didn't have Xbox Live until like mid-2010, was this game's campaign. Halo 2 had quotable lines, but Halo 3 has entire game set pieces etched into my mind. Escaping the crow's nest, seeing this Covenant cruiser fly by on Savo Highway, fighting the Scarab on the Storm, watching this Marine get turned by the Flood, the Forward Unto Dawn flying in and moving all the debris out of the way, the Scarab fight and challenging a brute chieftain all on the Ark, the Covenant's Hornet section and dual Scarab fight, and then finally going on the last Warthog run, hitting these jumps, praying you're not going to flip or that the panels underneath you won't explode and take you out with them. All of these moments are pretty much my childhood. However, the fact that these set pieces are so good still don't deter from the fact I could probably recite almost half of the cutscenes in Halo 3 off of memory alone. Seeing the UNSC fleet fire on Truth's ship, the Flood ship crashing in soon after, going through the portal and seeing the fleet come upon the Ark.
Brute ships, staggered line. Shipmaster, they outnumber us 3-1. Then it is an even fight. All cruisers fire at will. Burn their mongrel hides.
The intro to the Covenant, seeing every single Halo ring activate, and just, this shot, man. All of it just transcends nostalgia and makes me feel almost the exact same way time and time again. And with this momentous achievement, Bungie capped their journey and delivered the perfect ending to a trilogy. Bungie was effectively done with Halo for the time being. But, as we know, Microsoft had other plans, and to gain their independence from them, Bungie had to give us 2 last outings into the Halo franchise. Halo 3 ODST and Halo Reach were probably the best way Bungie could have left the franchise. ODST gives us an experience we've never had before, a game set in the Halo universe but without the power fantasy. This game leaves us with nostalgia for a character that didn't even speak throughout the entire duration of the story, a tone wildly different from any other we've seen up to this point, and music that sets itself apart from the rest of the franchise, while still staying true to the roots of Halo music. ODST in general just completely changed how we view the Halo universe as a whole. It grounds us and allows us a peek as to what the Marines we've been fighting with are going through. You aren't a 7-foot, 1-ton force of nature that towers over everything in his path anymore. You're just an ODST soldier. No Spartan suit, no energy shields, and no plot to save the world. ODST is really just about escaping a disaster that we only got a glimpse of in Halo 2. I mean, yeah, the squad manages to find something that helps towards the Human Covenant war, but what really matters is getting everyone grouped up and getting out of the city before the Covenant wipe it off the face of the planet. Seeing the aftermath of a Covenant invasion and hearing it in audio logs as you explore an almost abandoned city in the dead of night, searching for clues about the whereabouts of your team. I remember playing this as a kid, and I spent between each mission probably 7 hours just exploring the city and seeing where and what I could find or get into. You honestly just have to experience the other games and then play this one to understand just how different this feels. Honestly, it's the same with Halo Reach. While Reach is definitely more connected with what's happening through the franchise, the biggest difference here is that you don't win, really. Halo Reach was what many considered to be Halo's last hurrah. For a lot of people, this was the last time Halo meant something, especially its multiplayer. I probably spent the most time playing Halo Reach than anything else, customizing my Spartan, playing game after game in hopes of ranking up enough to unlock that Mark 6 helmet. The sounds of the multiplayer are just ingrained into my head. The sprinting and breathing your character does.
Tied the leader. Lost the lead. Tied the leader.
All of it just brings me back to sitting in front of my TV in early 2011, grinding out matches with friends, trying to do the "they came to hear me beg" achievement and getting so hyped when I actually finally did it, only for the achievement not to unlock and having to do it all over again. Custom games with friends, honestly just screwing around by myself in Forge. All of it just creates a Halo experience that feels so unique from the rest of the franchise. Where I think this uniqueness really shows up though is the campaign. Halo Reach is a Halo game that has you play as a badass super soldier, a part of a team of other badass super soldiers who all die one by one, either trying to save a planet they know is doomed or win a war they think is doomed. The nostalgic landmarks of this campaign that most remember are almost all crushing blows to Reach. Figuring out the Covenant are on Reach, seeing the Covenant's invasion force, blowing up a spire only to learn it was just cloaking a Covenant supercarrier, George's sacrifice only to learn it was in vain, the civilian lifeboat crashing because it tried to leave too early, the glassing of the city you were just walking around in, Kat's death, obtaining Cortana from the ruins of Swordbase as June is forced to split off and protect Halsey, Carter sacrificing himself to get the package to the Pillar of Autumn, Emil fighting until his last breath, and finally, all that's left is you, with only one objective: survive. But you can't even do that. All you're left with is the hope and the knowledge that what you and your team did on Reach really did turn the tide of the war. And for Halo fans, that's all they were left with too. With Bungie leaving the franchise, handing the reins over to 343, fans were hopeful that this new studio dedicated entirely to Halo would be able to take over the reins and handle Halo with the care it deserved. June 6th, 2011, almost a year after Reach released, the teaser trailer for Halo 4 drops. Master Chief is back, Cortana is back, but it looks different, and things feel different. That essentially is what Halo 4 and 5 are, different. In no way are either of these games fundamentally bad, but it's clear that across the community, 4 and 5 weren't as well received as the others. Halo 4 especially has had a turnaround recently with people going back on some of their earlier opinions, while Halo 5 still hasn't. Halo 4 changed a lot of things about Halo, and most of those changes showed up in multiplayer. Sprinting went from an ability to just something you could do at any moment. Elements from Call of Duty, who Halo has inspired, were now ironically ending up as inspiration for things in Halo 4. And so weapon loadouts, unlockable weapons, perks, ordnance drops, and more found their way into the multiplayer experience. None of these changes inherently were entirely bad, but I do think there's a definite reason why Halo 4's multiplayer isn't talked about as much compared to the rest of the franchise. Confidently, I can say that the new look of everything was probably the worst move 343 made. I understand that for 343, this was their chance to set themselves apart and make a Halo game that would really wow people and leave their own distinct mark on the franchise, but I just don't think the game looks that good. I of course don't mean graphically, I just mean design-wise. There's so much happening on screen, everything has so much detail that my eyes almost don't know what to focus on. The bloom and lens flare really don't help with this. Like, don't get me wrong again, the game looks graphically good, but with the design like this, it looks like someone just put on a Minecraft shader pack over Halo. The story is something that's been debated about since release, but I think the popular consensus has come back around to it honestly just not being that bad. It ultimately makes sense that Cortana would have rampancy at this point, and the idea of the Cortana we spent 3 games with saving the universe just being replaced by another model of herself that just isn't the same, you can relate to how the Chief feels. I also thought the ending was sad and worked emotionally. Now, even without a transition, I think we all know where this is going, but just to state this before I get into talking about it, I've secretly never actually played Halo 5. I won't be able to really comment on things like how the advanced mobility feels or what the multiplayer is like. I've actually heard pretty good things about it, but I'll be using the general community consensus and other people's reviews to get an idea of what I'm talking about. Halo 5's story, from what I can gather, seems like a mess. Looking at the intro cutscene and imagining myself as someone going straight from the ending of Halo 4 to the beginning of Halo 5, all I can feel is confusion. Like, yeah, this is cool, but who are these people? How did we get here? Where's Master Chief? What was the point of the cutscenes with Halsey before this? I honestly just don't get it. Overall, it seems people were just disappointed in how this game turned out. And after looking through Hunt the Truth and going back to look at trailers for this game, what was advertised was very different from what we got in game, so I can kind of understand the disappointment. This story definitely isn't as much about hunting down the Chief as you think it's going to be from these trailers. They have like one fight, and then Team Osiris pivots to trying to help Master Chief. And with that, 343's reputation among the Halo community seemed to be off to a rocky start. At this point, Halo as a franchise just wasn't as insanely popular as it was before. And while Halo 5 may have had the best launch of any Halo game, there's definitely a reason people are sticking around to play more Reach and Halo 3 multiplayer over 4 and 5. Putting aside multiplayer, the thing that feels the most off for me about what is essentially modern Halo is that I feel it's lost its character. Maybe it's nostalgia, or maybe I'm just not as interested in Halo as I was when I was 10, but there's just something there there with Halo 1 through Reach that I don't really feel with 4 and 5, you know? What's crazy is that I think other people feel it too, which is why I think it's actually a thing and that I'm not just going crazy about it. However, what's done is done. Halo 4 and Halo 5 came out, and after the community reception, 343 took things back to the drawing board and decided to work on something that'd be more faithful to what Halo is supposed to be, and hopefully give Halo back some of the status it once had with gamers. With 343 back to the drawing board, they plan to make radical changes to how they viewed Halo, and give the fans back some of the things they wanted. Announced at E3 2018, Halo Infinite is well on its way through development. The wait between Infinite and Halo 5 is the longest we've ever waited for a Halo game. 6 whole years of waiting and hoping that Infinite is the one to turn everything around. That's twice the wait between Halo 2 and Halo 3. And even after that, there's not a whole lot we know. We know that the campaign is going to have something to do with the Banished out on the Ark from Halo 3. Cortana will probably play some role considering that was a big thing in Halo 5. The multiplayer will be free to play, and this is the last mainline Halo release for the next decade. There's current screenshots, they look good, but at the same time, there's a gameplay demo in 2020 that didn't look too good. So we don't really know what this game is going to be like in motion. However, going just off of the current screenshots and what developers are saying about the game, and the continued updates about what Infinite looks like and where it's going, I think we'll be in good hands. All I can really hope for is a turnaround. Halo defined a decade of gaming in the 2000s. There used to be a genuine debate over whether Halo or COD was the better game to play on the Xbox. Things got to a point where in the discussion of picking up either an Xbox or a PlayStation, it was an actual con that PlayStation didn't have Halo, because if it didn't have Halo, you couldn't play with your friends who, most likely, already owned a 360 and were playing Halo. I know Halo can never really reach where it was before. The world's changed, and with the current age of gaming, it's just not something that would be feasible. But I would at least like Halo to enter discussion a lot more than it currently does, and to hopefully see larger player counts across Halo games as a whole. As I said though, with just how much care 343 seemed to be putting into Halo Infinite, I think we're in good hands. It seems a lot of time and care is being put into Halo Infinite, and there's passion behind what 343 is producing. So hopefully we get delivered an experience that lives up to the hype.